I'm Brian Professor B. Davis. This is your San Francisco 49ers update on Niners Radio here at the Satellite Digital Media Studio in the studios in San Francisco. Here's your latest 49ers news update with according by this by from NBC Sports Bay Area. In midst of Week 15's action in the books, it's clear the 49ers will likely play an NFC East team in the wild card or super wild card round in the playoffs, but that is still to be determined. After the Giants beat the Washington Commanders 20-12 on Sunday Night Football on NBC, if the season ended today, the 49ers would be the number 3 seed. They would host the New York Giants in the first round of the NFC playoffs beginning the following weekend if the NFC playoffs begin next weekend. Because the Giants and Commanders played in that 20-20 tie in Week 13 2 weeks ago, the tiebreaker advantage with the records within the NFC East now would go to the Giants because they won that second meeting. They move up to the number 6 seed, which would set up a matchup with the 49ers at Levi Stadium in the NFC wild card round. Now, of course, there is some you put that the playoff picture in perspective. The 49ers and the New York Giants do have some history hooking up in the playoffs in the past. So they would play the New York Giants if the season ended today, or if the season had stopped right here. The Niners would be playing the New York Giants. They would be the number 3 seed. They will take on the New York Giants in the opening weekend of the wild card playoff round at the Mecca at Levi Stadium. Of course, as I reiterate, these two teams have had some history in the playoffs when it comes to the Niners and Giants. Two coast-to-coast rival with me. Think of the Golden Gate Bridge and the Brooklyn Bridge are the two intertwines of two continents. And if the Niners were to play the Giants, they would most likely end up meeting up for the 9th time. And at least there is some recent playoff history between these two teams. In at least 5 of the 8 previous times, the winner of the playoff game between the Niners and Giants, the survivor of that game, would go on to win the Super Bowl, and has involved both of them 5 different times, including some memorable playoff games. The NFC Championship game back in 19, or some games that Niner fans would love to forget. The ugly disaster in '86 when Joe Montana got knocked out of that game with a concussion and was taken to a local hospital in Manhattan on a stretcher, or the NFC title game 4 years ago, 4 years later in 1990, when both the Giants and the Niners were the two best teams, no doubtly, in pro football. And the Niners lost a heartbreak. The Giants denied the Niners of a possible three-peat. Of course, when Larry Marshall knocked out Joe Montana in the game and Roger Craig fumbled. And then later the Giants marched down the field when Matt Barr hit the game-winning field goal as time expired, denying the Niners a three-peat. And then the playoff game in 2002, the wild card, the miracle finish, the Niners coming back down 38-14 to score 25 unanswered points. And that was the key. What was ado by the Giants' poor special teams with 2 horrible snaps, including the bad snap by Trey Junkin that gave the Niners eking out that 1-point win, and then the heartbreaker some 11 years ago in the NFC Championship game at the Stick, losing 20-17 on, once again, this time by poor special teams by the 49ers. Kyle Williams ended up muffing that fumble, that punt that set that game-winning field goal for the New York Giants. Giants would go on to beat the New England Patriots in Super Bowl 36. And then also a possibility, the Niners, of course, they still trail the Vikings by 1 full game for the number 2 seed because they know realistically they're not going to catch Philadelphia for the top spot. The Niners will end up of course, things can change within the next 3 weeks. The Niners, however, they still have a shot at moving up to the number 2 seed, but they would need some help. The Vikings, who tried hard to allow San Francisco to leapfrog them, they escaped with that historic come from back against the Indianapolis Colts in an interconference matchup on Saturday. Through Week 15, the 49ers have a better conference record, 8-2 versus the Vikings, 6-3. But right now, the Vikings have a better overall record, win-loss record than the Niners, and that is the difference. But if those two teams finish identical records at the end, the Niners would leapfrog to the number 2 seed, and the Vikings would drop to third. Here's how the NFC playoff picture right now looks. Entering Monday night's game as we doing this taping between the Green Bay Packers and the Rams. In the NFC, it's the Eagles who are 13-1. They've clinched the playoff berth. They still yet to wrap up the NFC East, and they could do that with a win against their longtime nemesis, the Dallas Cowboys, on Saturday down at Big D. The Vikings have wrapped up the NFC North. The Niners have clinched the NFC West. The earliest the Niners have clinched the NFC West at the earliest since 2011 when Jim Harbaugh's first year as head coach. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who have just been really limping down the stretch drive, they sit at 6-8. The Cowboys at 10-4. They would be the number 5 seed at the season end of the day. In fact, they would be traveling to Raymond James Stadium to take on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They've clinched the playoff berth. Then we'll round it out. The Giants are now 8-5-1. The Washington Commanders are 7-6-1. The Seahawks are now 7-7. That kind of sort of the loss for the Seahawks may not be as bad than people think, because they're still at 7-6 or 7-7, 7-6-1, only a half game out. And the surging Detroit Lions, who lost 6 of their first 7 games, has now won 6 in a row. They sit right there in good position for a playoff spot. The Packers at 5-8. They'll play on Monday Night Football as we're doing this taping. Of course, they will. So we're looking at the playoff picture. The Packers will play on Monday Night Football. Carolina, New Orleans, and the Falcons are all 5-9, and they're still mathematically alive for the division title. And Tampa Bay sits at 6-8. They're now just one game behind in a virtual. They're in a virtual three-way tie, or actually, they have Carolina, New Orleans in a 3-way tie for second place in the inferior NFC South, and then pretty much that is kind of the story. The Packers will play the defending Super Bowl champion Rams, who is just barely mathematically alive, and a loss probably on Monday night will all but eliminate the Rams. So we'll also just take a look at if the Niners were to win out, if they win out and then the Vikings lose at least one of their final 3 games and the Niners win out, then the Niners will get the number 2 seed. They will take on because they will win the tiebreakers, they will guaranteed at least 2 home playoff games, and then their first round opponent would possibly get whoever gets the final playoff spot in the NFC. Either they're going to play the Washington Guardians, and there has been some playoff history between the Niners and the Washington Guardians when then they were known as the Washington Redskins, and the Niners have played Washington in the playoffs 4 different times. They beat the Redskins 26-14 in the NFC Divisional Playoff in 1971. That was the first time the Niners ever hosted a playoff game at Candlestick Park. Then 1983, the Niners played the Redskins in the NFC Championship up at RFK Stadium in Washington when the Redskins were the defending Super Bowl champs. We all know the heartbreaker that the Niners came back to score 21 unanswered points to tie that game. It was 21 all late in the fourth quarter. Then it was those 2 phantom controversial pass interference call on Eric Wright, and then the holding call on Ronnie Lott. Ronnie Lott got caught by a pass interference, and Eric Wright was hit with a holding call. It was 2 questionable calls that gave the Redskins 2 automatic first downs. And then Mark Mosley, who had a real bad day, missed, I think, 3 or 4 field goals, hit a 21-yard field goal with little more than a minute left to play. And then they end up holding on to win 24-21, and then the Redskins 2 weeks later would lose to the Raiders in Super Bowl 18. They hooked up in the playoffs again in 1990. Niners, who were the two-time defending Super Bowl champs, on that mission towards that three-peat, they end up beating the Redskins 28-10. They lose to the Giants in that heartbreaker in the NFC Championship game a week later. Then they beat the Redskins in the defending Super Bowl champion Redskins 20-13 in '92. And then a week later lose to the Dallas Cowboys, who will go on to win the Super Bowl in the '92 NFC Championship. So there you look at the up-to-date playoff picture. Possibility the Niners could possibly face the Detroit Lions if they get the number 2 seed in the opening round. And the last time they've met only twice in the playoffs since the Niners joined the NFL in 1950. The 1957 playoff game where the Niners blew that big lead. Detroit came back and won that conference semifinal out at Keysar Stadium. Then they would lose, or then Detroit would go on to win the NFL title that year. And then that was 1957. Then fast forward 26 years later in a divisional playoff back on New Year's Eve, 1983, where the Niners barely hold on to a 24-23 game. Eddie Murray missed a 40-yard field goal late in the fourth quarter, and that was the difference. And the Niners end up going on to lose to the Redskins in the NFC Championship game a week later. So that's what is the NFC playoff picture is set right now. So let me also just remind you, coming up for this Saturday, there will be a special event for all you 49er fans. It's the Christmas on the Boulevard this Saturday, December 24th, up at Empire Row, Levi Stadium. It will be at Green Lot, polls 2425, 9:30 a.m. Come on out there. We're going to have a great event for the 415 Niner chapter, and also the 408 faithfuls. They'll be out there. They'll have a Santa Claus out there. He'll be coming to Levi's. There'll be a lot of family. A lot of the kids going to be out there. It's going to be a fun event. Come on by if you're going to come out there to the stadium. We'll be out there taping. It'll be a special edition of 49ers Tailgate Show, the Christmas holiday edition on Niners Radio. And that is going to be a great event coming up this Saturday. And it's going to be a very fun event. So we hope you could stop on by. And there are plenty of tickets available for this weekend's game between the 49ers and the Guardians, not the Nationals, but the Guardians. And there's plenty of tickets are still available for that upcoming game. So a reminder also, if you want to check out the team store, 49ers team store, for all the people who are watching, who lives over in the South Bay, out there in the San Jose, Santa Clara area, out there in the South Bay or Peninsula, the 49er team store, they have NFC West Championship shirts. The shirts are $44.99. The caps are the division championship caps are $31.99. The playoff gear is for the shirts is $44.99, and both red beanies and caps are $29.99. And you can visit the 49ers flagship team store at Levi Stadium in Santa Clara. They're open daily, Thursdays through Tuesdays. They will be open on daily. They'll open from Thursdays through Tuesday, 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. They're closed on Wednesdays. This Friday they'll be open from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. And then they'll be on game days they'll be open. Christmas Day they'll be closed, but then they'll be back 1 week from today on the 26th. They'll be open from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. So come on by, shop for your Niner faithful spirit as they make that march towards the NFL playoffs and possibly on their way back to the Super Bowl. You could go online, go to shop49ers.com. Shop49ers.com. And just a reminder, for all the latest news on 49ers, go to 49ers.com. Check me out us out on Niners Radio at youtube.com/Niners Radio 49. And you can email me or check us out Facebook, facebook.com/Niners Radio 49. Email Niners Radio 49 at gmail.com, and Twitter, Brian Davis at Niners Radio 49. That's it for you now for your San Francisco 49ers update. Reminder again, 49ers will take on the Washington Commanders this Saturday on Christmas Eve. That will be at 1:25 kickoff time. That game will be seen on CBS and on the U.S. Bank 49ers Radio Network, KBR 680, 104.5 FM, with Greg Papa and Tim Ryan with the call. I'm Brian Professor B. Davis. Thank you for your San Francisco 49ers update on Niners Radio.